And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am thrilled to be hosting the incredible Saul Lelchuk, author of One Got Away today. Saul, welcome to Mighty Mysteries. Tell us about your book.
Hey, thanks so much, Sara. It's great to be on here.
Yay.
So One Got Away is the second in a series, and it's featuring Nikki Griffin. She is a bookseller by day and private eye and vigilante by night. She has a bookstore in Berkeley called the Brimstone Magpie, and she loves working there, but sometimes customers do come in with a problem that cannot only be solved by a book, and then she will take them upstairs to an unmarked door where she has an office above the bookstore. And sometimes problems need a more, shall we say, vigorous solution than only the written word can offer. So that's Nikki in a nutshell. This second book, One Got Away, follows her as she's hired by a very wealthy and kind of reclusive San Francisco old money family, and the matriarch is being defrauded by a con man who won't seem to go away, and there's even hints of blackmail in the opening pages. So Nikki is hired by her son to follow the con man, and pretty soon she realizes that no one seems to be telling her the truth about things, and there might be something much worse going on than a mere swindle.
Ooh, well, I am here for it. As soon as I saw bookseller by day, vigilante PI by night, I was all in, because who doesn't love that? I mean, who doesn't want to work in an adorable little bookstore, selling books, having conversation about books, showing the readers their next favorite book, roaming the aisles during the day, but then at night kicking ass and taking names later. I mean, it's just two fabulous careers combined into one. And you are getting amazing praise for this. So I want to get into all of that, but I just want to pause very briefly and welcome all of our friends who are watching on Facebook. Welcome, everybody. If you've been here before, you know how it goes. If you're new, welcome, welcome, welcome. You're going to love it here. Here's how it goes. Every Tuesday, I give you two featured authors in the mystery and thriller genre, aka the best genre, and you get to ask them anything about their writing, about their books, about the process, whatever's weighing on your mind. Get it going in the comments, and our featured authors will answer that for you. So just go ahead and start typing, and I will get them right over. Welcome, Margaret. Welcome, Sherry. Welcome, Gail, top community member. Welcome, Kim. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you here. Gail is saying hi again. Gail, good to have you. So you guys, this book is getting crazy good press. So I've got to share just a few words of that press. So of that amazing press. So Publishers Weekly is raving rollicking. This breakneck-paced thriller is unapologetically bloody fun. Amazing review there from Publishers Weekly. Kirkus, who I believe the New York Times called reliably curmudgeonly, also raving, saying the nearly fearless and deeply empathetic Nikki is ridiculously easy to root for, and the pace is fast and furious all the way to a deeply satisfying finale, a smashing sequel. Let's pause there, because you've got a lot more and I want to share those, but let's pause there because this is really great press. Tell us about how did you write a book that earned that kind of this kind of reviews? How did you, especially a sequel, the sophomore book ain't easy to write because the pressure is bearing down. Give us a peek inside your process.
Sure. And I mean, I think if I was only answering your question in 2 words, it would definitely be great editors. I mean, it's, I was so lucky to work with the people I got to work with at Flatiron Books. And, anytime they were reading and thought, are things slowing down a little? Should something be trimmed? Do we need a little more of anything? It was just incredible to be able to kind of fall back on their wealth of wisdom and advice as I was fashioning this story. I think for me, I've lived in the Bay Area for a long time. So I've always wanted to set a book there. I've always thought it would be really fun. I tell people that my original dream was to start a used bookstore myself. And when I started to realize that might not be in the cards, the next best thing was to have a character do one in fiction. So that's where Nikki's bookstore, the Brimstone Magpie, came along. I think for me,
how did you get the name Brimstone Magpie? I have to know.
So that goes back to Dickens, and that was one of the first. A Dickens book was the first used book that she ever sold. Before she even fully realized she had a bookstore, she just needed a place to put all of her books. And so, Brimstone Magpie is a very colorful curse word uttered by one of the characters. And so, Nikki couldn't resist taking that phrase and putting it on the front of her shop.
I love it. Okay, tell us more about your process.
So I guess for me, I've never been any good at outlining. And I really wish I was, because I feel like so much of the stress would disappear if I could just have a nice, clean, multi-page outline looking at me every time I sat down. But I can't do it that way. For me, it's all about getting a character down, getting a couple scenes that I like in the beginning that have some energy to me that I feel good about. And at that point, basically just hope and a prayer that every morning when you sit down, you can see a couple feet in front of your nose, so to speak. So that's kind of how I like to write. I have, a protagonist who I feel is a pretty strong and, vivid protagonist at this point. I know her pretty well. I've spent many years with Nikki, and, we've kind of had ongoing conversations during that time. I know Nikki pretty better than most people in the world, for better or worse. And so to me, it's fun thinking if she walks into a room or if she walks into a situation, how might she react, and how am I seeing the world through her eyes? Then when I start to think about plot and put those things together, I think every book in this genre, at least, it needs one or more good villains. It needs some twists and turns and things like that. It needs some fun action moments. But to me, those are all kind of secondary to just finding a protagonist that you really feel like you can get behind, and then starting to populate her world with side characters who are hopefully fun to read.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for breaking down the process so clearly. I appreciate that insight, into your process. Welcome, Kat. Welcome, Christine. Welcome, Liz. Great to have you back. So let me ask you this, Saul. You're a dude. How do you write a kick-ass, badass female bookseller by day, PI by night? How do you get into this head and this body?
So I thought about that a lot before I ever wrote a word, because it was this kind of, terrifying challenge. And yet it was also pretty enticing. It was exciting to think, because after all, that's what fiction is. It's stepping away from, some measure of reality and, finding your way somewhere new. So for me, I paid close attention. I, obviously read tons of books by female authors and female protagonists in the, mystery thriller genre. And, I think that you can break it down to a couple different levels. Like, you have the kind of superficials of, what kind of shoes is someone going to put on in the morning? What are they wearing? Are they using, lip gloss or some hair product that maybe I wouldn't be putting on? And that's pretty easy to do. That's like, that's all you have to, you don't need to barrage readers. You don't need to give them 20 different, paragraphs per chapter about those kind of more superficial external details. I think to me, what's more interesting and also challenging is getting in someone's head and thinking, if Nikki walks into a room, how might she perceive things differently than I do? Is she going to notice different things than I do? I feel very sure when I say that women tend to be far more observant than men, no matter, what the setting is. And when your female protagonist is a private eye, that obviously ups the, observation even more.
Yeah.
And the flip side of that, is when she walks into a room, how is she perceived versus, how a man might be. And I think that one of the things Nikki really likes to do is lean into that and play into that and frankly take advantage of that. A lot of her job consists of giving people an image and impression that she chooses ahead of time for them to have for her own purposes. When she's following someone, when she's tailing someone, when she's going after someone, she wants them to see something that's not necessarily the truth. And oftentimes I think that they might make certain assumptions about a female character that end up giving her the upper hand in the situation.
Oh, I love that, because I've actually read that even security details for high-ranking political figures, they realized a few years back that was an advantage to have a woman who doesn't look the traditional stereotypical role, that actually they could infiltrate the space and see things and be part of things and actually provide a higher level of service because of exactly what you're saying. I love that. Now, tell us, when you write the draft, do you have a group of beta readers or first readers? Are any of them female? Have any of them said to you, "You got this wrong"?
So I have a close group of people. I have my best friend reads it, my brother reads it, my girlfriend reads it, my parents read it, and my agent and editors read it. And the majority of the people I just named are female. So I definitely get, that perspective, and it's invaluable. And if there's a moment or if there's some detail that trips anyone up, then of course I'm going to go back and take a pretty hard look at whether that should be there or whether that should be modified. I feel really lucky to have, that group, not just my family, and friends, but also everyone I work with. And, as a writer, I think one of the scariest things in the world is imagining what you're doing actually being one day transported into the world, and then you can't really do much. You can't touch it. You can't affect it anymore. And so for me, part of that process, what's so reassuring is having the support of a close group of readers.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. Now, let me go back to something that you said, where you were saying that, you're not a plotter. Me neither. You're a pantser. So that means, for those who aren't familiar with these terms, you're not, Jeffrey Deaver was on the show and he actually spent 6 months plotting it out. That's all he does, 8 hours a day. He may end up with a 180-page document of that plot. And I thought, when I heard that, my God, teach me your ways, man. And I'm going to try to plot next book, but we'll see how that goes. I'm also not a plotter, but that has led me down some very frustrating paths, which I like to call dead ends, where then I have to back it up myself on out of there. Does that happen to you? Or do you, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, you definitely have those moments. I don't think those are the moments that necessarily make you really love being a writer. It's more like going over a big pothole and thinking, "Oh gosh, what did I just do to my car?"
Yes.
But they're part of the game. They're part of the game. And I think when I think there's some scenes where I feel pretty good about them immediately, and I think, okay, this is working. It might not be perfect, but this is going to work in the larger scheme of things. That being said, I'm not always right about that. Sometimes you instinctively think this is working, and then when you start to have to zoom out and look at the entire story from a kind of bird's eye view, you think, wow, this was really fun to do and it worked page by page, but does it fit in with the larger plot, or is it maybe distracting, or is it a thread that doesn't need to be there? And, then comes the very sad work of cutting. And I cut a ton from my books. There's no doubt about it. If I hadn't cut a word from it, it would probably be 600 pages. I'd be, going up against, Tolstoy for, Lent. So that's just part of the fun, I guess. That's how you got to think about it.
How much do you think you really cut? How many words or pages?
I would say with this book, dozens and dozens of pages, if not low hundreds, like a lot, like tens of thousands of words.
How long does it take you to write this book?
This book, I wrote the first draft pretty quickly. I wrote the first draft, I'd say, in about 6 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's what got sent off to my editors. But this one went through quite a bit of revision. There were a couple of things early on where they thought, hey, is this working perfectly? Do you want to consider, a few of these other things? You get that, single space, 6-page, letter back with different comments. And it's this, it's this weird feeling, because when you send a book off to anyone, you think in your mind, I want to have this as perfect as can be. And then you get that letter back and think, oh gosh, the work is really in some ways just beginning. So this was certainly, a longer process. I think that the first draft was, if anything, not the most challenging part of the process. And some writing, I guess, just, that's how it goes. And as long as it ends up where people want it to be, that's all one can really hope for.
Oh, I love that. As long as it ends up where you want to be. Yes, because the editing process is is not my favorite. Like, let's just leave it at that. Christina, great question. She's asking, what is something that you've recently enjoyed reading, and what are you currently reading? Yeah, give us a peek at your stack.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been all kinds of books, but I've been loving Lisa Unger recently. Just finished Confessions on the 745. She's just, my gosh, can she tell a story? And it's the kind of book where you just feel you're learning so much as a writer. Every time you turn the page. When it comes to tension and pacing and structure and just all these different techniques.
She was actually on the show the day before her book came out for Confessions on the 745. So I love that you love that book.
Oh, I got to go back into your archives then. I got to see that one.
She's amazing. And she is a brilliant, I mean, the way that she thinks about the craft, absolutely incredible. Christina's saying she loves the book as well. It's that Lisa is brilliant. Absolutely, she is. And I love that you're taking notes from pacing and tension building. I always tell myself I'm going to take notes, but then I get sucked in and forget.
To be clear, the notes aren't actually with a pen in hand. They probably should be, but the books are too exciting. It's too much fun.
They're up here.
We can't have it feeling like homework.
No. What else are you loving, Saul?
Recently I got just on such a Don Winslow and Dennis Lehane kick. I mean, they are just absolute masters of the genre. And I won't even try to list all the titles I read, but it was, definitely in the dozens between the two of them. I'd point to especially, like, for example, Shutter Island, I think, is one of really the great, mysteries of all time. I mean, it's just so perfectly done. So those two are just complete masters of the genre. And especially Don Winslow, a lot of his books are set in Southern California, the kind of SoCal surf scene, with so many dark currents underneath those appealing looking waves. And so to me, that's so much fun because that's kind of the whole California tradition of detective literature, going back to like Dashiell Hammett and, Raymond Chandler, and showing this, really dark and kind of grim side underneath the sunshine and underneath the palm trees. So as soon as I hit California, I was like, this is definitely something that I want to try myself.
Oh, interesting. I had never correlated the setting of California to what you're talking about. I never noticed it. So thanks for that insight. I do love how setting becomes a character in some authors' books, like Jane Harper, who's also been on the show, and she uses the Australian outback or the Tasmanian beach. I mean, the setting, the scene, the land comes alive and becomes a character itself. I absolutely love that. But now I'm going to keep an eye on the California setting. So thank you for that, Saul. Any other recommendations you'd like to share?
So I just picked up yesterday, actually, We Begin at the End. And obviously that's a book that everyone is talking about for good reason. I'm really excited to read it. I will have to report back.
Yeah. That one's about the kid protagonist. Is it Chris Whitaker? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I haven't read that one either. That is getting some really crazy, good press. Christina's saying she completely agrees. Christina, thank you for the great questions. Anyone else got any questions for Saul? Meanwhile, Chris is not the only one who's getting great press. You, sir, got a rave review from none other than Lee freaking Child, who said action-packed and razor sharp. Wow. I mean, talk about goals. Jack Reacher would love Nikki Griffin. Tell us about that.
So here's something I've actually never said on any kind of, recorded podcast. Lee almost got me in a car accident with that.
Because tell us the story.
So I was driving back one night, and I know that you're not supposed to touch your phone in the car, and I'm not admitting anything. There's a red light, and I happened to see that a note had come in from my editor with the words Lee Child in the subject line. And I knew that, we had asked for a blurb, but he's Lee Child. So, so does the rest of the world. And it's such a long shot. And then I suddenly see, and I'm like, I can't stop reading this. I have to figure out what's going on. And so long story short, I did not cause a rear end collision, I'm happy to report. But it was very, very hard to take my eyes off the Lee Child blurb on my phone, even for caution on the road. So I'm happy I didn't have to send Lee a bill for any fender bender, but that blurb was a pretty fun moment.
Okay, everybody, you heard it here first on Mighty Mysteries. So, Saul, I've got to tell you, when you started telling me that story, I thought you were going to go in a different direction. And I was already thinking, oh my God, this is brilliant. So, the way to get a blurb from Lee Child is to follow him, rear end him, and then say that you will not sue if he blurbs your book. I mean, I really thought that's what where we were going. Or you pulled in front of him, got him to rear end you, and then said, you know what, I'm not going to press charges. Just give me this fabulous blurb saying it's the best book you've ever read. I mean, because that's going to be my new plan. Christina is clapping for us.
This is the advice we can't actually give, so this is as close as we can come to saying it. It's a foolproof technique for getting the blurb from your favorite author.
I love it. I love it. And am I the only one who wants to see a Nikki Griffin, Jack Reacher, teaming up or face off or some kind of interaction? I mean, this would be so freaking fabulous. You also got an amazing review from Booklist. I'm going to scroll back. I saw it posted back here. I just don't want to miss it. Yes, Booklist. Well, I'm going to just keep it there for a second because it's covering your face. Fans of the first book or hard-boiled women detectives in general will relish this heroine's latest outing. Another rave review from Booklist, and especially praising your ability to write a hard-boiled female detective. That must have felt good.
That felt amazing. Those pre-publication reviews, especially from those places, PW and Kirkus and Bookslist, it's always... that's what booksellers to a certain degree form their opinions on, obviously, readers as well. So when that came in, I was very, very happy that particular day.
Yay. Also getting a review from Douglas Preston, who is, let me read this exactly right. He praises your ability to draw the reader in so relentlessly that you find yourself getting kicked out of bed and reading all night on the sofa. High praise there. What do you think? And you talked a little bit about this with reading Lisa Unger's amazing Confessions on the 745. What do you think the key is to keeping those pages turning, to keeping a reader up until 3 a.m.? How do you actually execute that?
For sure. So that's a great question. And I think there's so many, ways to go about it. But I think part of it is the idea of different types of pressure, both external and internal. So like for me, I'm not one of those writers where there's a fight scene on every page and there's, intense action, at every moment. Those books can be super fun to read, but it's just never been exactly my style. So I like to use those moments pretty sparingly. And I also like to look for ways to create these different internal pressures within someone's head, because that can kind of equal any external moment. So, for example, one scene in this Nikki book, she's sitting alone in a hotel room, while she's following this con man. And it's a moment, if you're sitting by yourself in a hotel room, that doesn't need to be anything exciting about that. And in fact, oftentimes there's not. But for me, I, have her having one conversation with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend is telling her that maybe it's a good time for them to move in together. And Nikki, being fiercely independent, to put it mildly, is kind of opposed. And so you have this one dimension of pressure. And then you also have the phone ringing, and this strange woman who Nikki doesn't really know says there's more going on than you are seeing here. And there's trouble that you're not actually understanding. And so that creates another pressure. And in the meantime, she's a little, I won't say nervous. She doesn't quite get nervous the way maybe I would, but she's feeling a certain level of apprehension at meeting this con man and knowing that this person might be the first man she's encountered who kind of equals her in terms of his observational powers and his, mental agility. And so then suddenly a moment where you're sitting by yourself in a hotel room can exert these different pressures on a protagonist. And so that's very fun for me to play with, looking for moments that maybe are a little less obvious and a little more psychological, and trying to create pressure from those sources as well.
Ooh, I love that. So finding those different pressure points, internal, external, personal, professional, and pressing on them in a painful, exacting, but extremely successful way. Good question coming in from Christina on Facebook. Have you heard the audiobooks of your own books? What do you think of them? She's a major audiobook fan. Saul, what do you think?
I think that Christina's in luck, because I was lucky enough myself to get January Lavoie to read them. and she is just a complete rock star. I mean, any time you listen to January, she's selective. I mean, she picks and chooses her projects, and so like any time to me you see her reading a book, that that's kind of got a certain mark of quality control upon it. And when from the first chapter, when I heard January start reading the first book, Save Me from Dangerous Men, I just saw I can't picture Nikki, any other way. This is just perfect. The only problem with January's reading is that then when I do readings in bookstores, I'd start reading that chapter and I'd be just so acutely aware that I am not anywhere near January LaVoy's level when it comes to reading or audiobooks. So that's something that I've had to just bear with for the last couple of years. But yeah, check her out. She's really amazing.
Oh, awesome. Now, did you get to weigh in on her, or was she the only candidate? Did they give you three, or were they just like, this is the person, and you were thrilled?
So Macmillan Audio, they're amazing to work with. And they obviously, they're just so the audio producer, the person who was producing the audiobooks, did let me weigh in. But when I heard the name and then when I, of course, listened to some more of what January had done, I just thought this is really perfect. I'm so lucky to, have this actress willing to read the part of Nikki, and for that matter, many other characters as well. I mean, January has a reading that's leveled and style that's just so dynamic, and it's so each paragraph, each sentence that she's reading, the book really just seems to kind of come alive in a different wave and then just on the page.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay, we have 4 minutes left. So that means it is time for the lightning round. So get your questions going. We have just 4 minutes left with Saul. So anything you want to ask about his book, his process, just type them in the questions and I will get them right over to him. Welcome, Melinda. Welcome, Shailesh. Great to have you here as well. Thanks for joining us. So let me ask you this. What's one thing you want readers to feel or learn or take from when they spend time with you on these pages?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I think a lot of it was when I set out to write the character of Nikki. I hated the idea of just kind of producing this like Terminator character who can just kind of mow people down in a room. And I also, kind of hated the notion that, a tough female like PI protagonist, has to be, this kind of like emotionless, sort of cold-blooded, whatever stereotypical words you want to throw in. That was never my intention. And so I really wanted Nikki to have vulnerability. She has this terrible crime occurred to her family when she was a child. And she has a brother who's not always in the best shape, who she really looks out for and tries to protect, and she wants a relationship. I wanted a character who has some of the same preoccupations and concerns as any of us do, right? Am I gonna end up with the person I hope to in life? Am I gonna be alone or with someone? Are my friends gonna accept me for who I am? I mean, there's so many different apprehensions that Nikki has that have nothing to do with actually solving crimes. So I wanted someone who was a fierce protector, someone who would not hesitate to try to, correct injustice if she sees it. But I never wanted that to come at the expense of her real emotional core.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Ooh, great question coming in from Hallmark. Do you know a female private detective?
That is a great question. Sadly, I cannot count any friends of mine. Maybe I've encountered them, whether I knew it or not in life. But I don't personally know any. I have yet to meet one, but I hope I get to.
Maybe there's one sitting outside of your apartment or house right now, Saul. I mean, maybe there's binoculars trained on you. We don't know. If she's good at her job, you won't know. Fun fact.
I'm gonna draw the curtains just in case.
I think that's a good idea. I actually had a private investigator on the show, Ellen McGarrahan, who is a former investigative reporter and now turned PI, one of the top 5 female PIs in the world. And she came on the show a couple weeks ago to tell us about her brand new book, which was absolutely fantastic, called Two Truths and a Lie. It's a memoir and also an investigation of her time on the beat while she had to go and witness someone being put to death, actually, which is something that reporters have to do. I didn't know that. Another question from Christina. What are you currently working on? Great question, Christina. Saul, give us the skinny.
Yeah, so this past year, I'd had a standalone idea in my mind for a couple of years, and when the pandemic hit, I thought, okay, no more excuses. This is a good time to start something new. I grew up in this very rural town in New Hampshire, tiny town, nothing much of going on, dirt road, middle of the woods, all of that. And I've always wanted to send a mystery there. I thought it would be so fun, and so I had the idea to have this young family, and they move into town and everyone seems to know each other. And then they start to see some funny things going on with this big, rambling country house that they bought. And they start to wonder if someone is watching them, and there's a unsettling note that gets left. But I had fun, creating this unreliable narrator. And as the book continues, I think the reader starts to wonder, where is the problem? Is the problem with this town that they moved into, or is the problem with this family who moved in? And so I just finished that up about a month ago, but it was a really fun activity for me. I still can't bake sourdough bread or do anything I might have learned to do during the pandemic, but I was able to get into this new book, and that was a lot of fun.
Bake us some bread, Saul. Stop writing books and bake us some bread. Christina said, that sounds awesome. Christina, I totally agree. Hallmark is saying, thank you. And this has been a great interview. Hallmark, thanks for your great questions. Thanks for joining us. We are out of time right now, but we're going to continue the conversation over in my brand new mystery and thriller group called Mystery and Thriller Maven. So I'll be posting the interview there. And I know I love to nerd out and talk about this stuff all day long. So come join my group over there and let's continue the conversation. Saul, thank you so much for joining us about your brand new book, One Got Away. We love spending time in the world of Nikki Griffin. And come back next time when your next book is out and tell us about this family in New Hampshire.
Sounds great to me. Thanks so much for having me on today. And thanks everyone who tuned in. This was a lot of fun.
Yay. I loved every minute of it. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time right here on Mighty Mysteries.
All right, bye.